Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. And I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden. Actually, welcome to my spooky plush garden with many Danme boys and spooks. As you can tell, every single stream, there's another little something added. See if you can spot it. It'll be the Easter egg. But anyway, I hope you all are doing well today. I know that I am. This week has seemed very long, but we're getting through it and it's okay. I am very much looking forward to Friday, though. I will not lie. But anyway, welcome to, I believe, the 5th live stream of book 3 for the Disabled Tyrant's Beloved Pet Fish. I am not sponsored by 7 Seas, nor do I own anything. The only thing I own is my time and the physical copies of these books. So please do not come at me for copyright. And hello, Cookielicious, and hello, Mo Mars Rover. How's your week been? As I said before, mine's been a little crazy, but I'm here tonight and I'm feeling good about it. So I'll take what I can. But anyway, this is a chill stream. I will be talking to chat, I will be talking to the book, and I will be talking to myself. If that's not really your cup of tea, maybe stick around. You might find it might be. But if not, I totally get it. All good. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Oh yeah, just a little sleep deprived. It's been a lot, but glad to be here though. I feel both of those things, and I'm glad you're feeling awesome, K-Moment. That's good as well. Hello, Chi-Chi Kiki. How you feeling tonight? I hope good. Yeah, I don't know why, but this week's just felt like it's really dragging on. I know there was a full moon recently, so maybe that's it, but who knows? Oh, good. I'm glad you're doing good. I think that's about it. Oh, I actually, of course, I have some Danme merch again, but this actually arrived today, and the box was like totally smashed. So I ended up opening this off stream earlier. Ta-da! It's Wei Wuxian. I know it's a tangerine. You really like the lights in the background. I decided to put them on strobe this time. If that bugs anybody, I can set them back to just normal. I know it's supposed to be like an orange or a tangerine. I'm going to call it a pumpkin because Wei Wuxian's birthday is in October, and he totally looks like a pumpkin. Like, tell me he does not look like a pumpkin right now. It just fits so much better than an orange. He's never been, like, associated with an orange. And I know, like, they're doing fruits, like a blueberry, strawberry. I don't know what the other one they were doing. Like, orange, blueberry, strawberry. Maybe it's just 3. Like, right? It's a pumpkin. So, he's going to go on my work bag. And I will know. And everybody else will probably just think it's like a Labubu knockoff. I've gotten that about some of my other plushie things that I hook on there. Right? Fits his spooky vibe perfectly. But yeah, he's super soft. And he's winking. So he's being his cheeky boy self. But yes. So he'll just be like chilling over here. But that being said, like, pumpkin is a fruit. That is true, Chi-Chi Kiki. That's very true. I think the last thing I need to mention is, like, I'm not fluent. I'm not a fluent speaker, so there may be some things I don't necessarily pronounce correctly, but I'm going to do my best. And that's got to count for something, right? I think it does. But anyway, The yeet count and sobs. We are currently at 3 yeets for book 3, and we are at 11 sobs for book 3. We're going to be starting a little bit early today. Hang on, let me make it full screen so I can actually see the time. Wow, we're starting about 5 minutes in. I really don't have much to talk about today. Oh, I totally forgot. Our book recs. Silly me. Thursday brain. So we have actually kind of a mix of emotions this week, this time for our fanfics, because the first one kind of is a little goofy, a little chill. So for the Scum Villain recommendation, I picked a fic called Betting Against the Table by Chaotic Good Lawyer. It's an interesting one-shot where OG Bingha goes and finds, like, modern-day Shen Yuan and kidnaps him, but kind of does it feels weird to say, but does it in a healthy way, where he's not coercing him quite. Yeah, he's not being as intense Bingha as he could be, but kind of starts learning about what a healthy relationship looks like. It's pretty short. I think it's just under 10,000 words, but here's the actual summary. After being kidnapped by his favorite character, Shen Yuan decides to roll with it on one condition. Emperor Luo Binghe has to let him go back to his own apartment whenever he goes on a quest. We know what kind of quest he's talking about. For a kidnapper, Luo Binghe is surprisingly accommodating and agrees. Wondering how much time Shen Yuan will have to himself away from the sticky emperor, he makes a spreadsheet to estimate how long Binghe will be gone. Only because he's Shen Yuan, it escalates quickly from there to a massive project to prevent Luo Binghe from suffering, of course. Binghe? What do you mean you didn't bring back a new wife? So, basically he tries to help out Luo Binghe, and Luo Binghe sees a pretty boy that cares genuinely about him, and things go the way you guessed things would go. As for the MDZS fic recommendation, we get to swing to the other side of the emotional roller coaster with pain. I picked A Song You've Never Heard by Ara Here. I think I'm saying that right. And it's honestly a heartbreaking and heartrending, though beautiful story. And it really hurts, but it's very, very, very well written. And it basically makes you say thank you for the pain. So the summary is, Wei Wuxian is fatally injured, but Lan Wangji is nothing if not stubborn. If I was gone, Hanguang Jun, what would you do? He asks this on a quiet morning at the end of summer, the hum and click of insects outside whispering into the Jingxi. It's warm once the mist burns off the recesses, and bright with dappled sunlight. Lan Wangji looks at him, brow pinched. Nothing, he says after a moment. It is, he discovers 3 months later, the first lie Lan Wangji has ever told. So, it's another rather short one. It's a one-shot as well. It will make you hurt, but it's also a damn good read. It's very sad. But it's one of those, if you want something well written that's gonna make you cry, that one might do it. That one might do it. I know I usually do either the fun or the goofy ones, but I thought I'd throw in one rather serious one now and again. So that is mine. My serious recommendation. But yeah. Now we can get to the reading, which is much less serious and much more fun. All right. So we are now starting around 9:30. Come on. Why do these new pens never work? Erg. Alright, it's gonna be like 10 minutes at this point. Has anyone actually been reading the recommendations? I'm just curious what people think of some of them. If they liked them, if they didn't. Just out of pure curiosity. Okay. All right. Ah! Things are falling. Can you read them whenever you have time at work? Nice. All right. So, last time we had a really sweet moment between Li Yu and Prince Jing, where Prince Jing wants Li Yu to say his name, but not to have to tell Li Yu that he wants him to say his name. And so they have a real sweet moment between themselves. It's very intimate and just perfect. And just with a little bit of Prince Jing possessiveness at the end, because kind of what spurred this on, it would have happened eventually anyway, but what really spurred it on was the fact that Li Yu was calling the dog by name, and Prince Jing was like, "Excuse me, whose male name did you just say? Like, you can say the dog's name. Why haven't you said my name?" So there was just that little possessive crumb right there at the end, where he said, "If he could say Xiang Fang's name so easily, then why not his too?" That was how we ended it last live stream. So now we start with chapter 102, Fish Babies Write a Letter. That sounds adorable, and I'm sure it will be. We'll continue the cuteness now that I've just finished talking about something that absolutely will make you cry. All right. The last line of main missions still hadn't been revealed yet, so Li Yu didn't have any tasks he had to run around completing. Prince Jing's manor was managed well by Wang Shi, and he didn't have much to do as a consort. He just had to educate the children every day and give Prince Jing some ideas from time to time. From this angle, life was still the way he liked it and hadn't changed just because he became a consort. This was the kind of life he always wanted, and it was also a result of Prince Jing's doting. Prince Jing did whatever he asked. Quanjude Roast Duck restaurant was open for him simply because he said he wanted to eat it. Now it had become a famous delicacy known far and wide, and even the Duke of Cheng'en's son from the capital praised it wholeheartedly. The days passed quickly. With Prince Jing's hard work, the locust, which was a major threat on the western border, had been eradicated, and another major threat, the bandits, were too dead or injured to cause any more trouble. The western border was now stable, and there was much less chaos near the border. In the blink of an eye, the little fish babies turned 100 days old. So, for anyone that doesn't know, in this culture, there is something known as the 100-day celebration. So, I believe it's in the first 30 days, the mother goes into self-isolation, basically, which people still do this nowadays, and kind of keeps the baby mostly contained, kind of like to keep their immune system, kind of give it a chance. And so it's very limited who sees the babies. To my understanding, I do not know for a fact, but this is just what I've gathered through various things, various cultural bits. So then the 100-day celebration is kind of where A lot of people would then be meeting the baby for the first time, celebrating their 100 days of life. Kind of also, I'm guessing this came from a lot of babies not making that long. So then after the first 100 days, they're kind of like, oh, okay, the baby's gonna make it. That is an assumption. I'm not sure if it's 100% correct, but I do know that the 100-day celebration is a big thing. And that's where a lot of people actually meet the baby. I might look into that more because it seems really interesting. But back to the book. Prince Jing held a grand celebration for them, just like a wedding. There was a huge banquet, and numerous guests were invited. A very lively scene. After 100 days, Yi Qinghuan came to say goodbye. Yi Shizi had come to visit partially because the House of Chang'an wanted him to, and he'd asked the emperor especially for the time off. He'd helped Prince Jing a lot during the 100 days he'd been here, but since his wife was pregnant and the bandits Prince Jing was dealing with were pretty much gone, it was time to leave. Before he left, Prince Jing had a deep talk with Yi Shizi and told him that he wanted to write a letter of gratitude for him to bring back. Yi Qinghuan had a good relationship with Prince Jing. He agreed readily. When Prince Jing was writing the letter, Li Yu and Wang Shi came to visit with the two children each in their arms. The human-shaped fish children had accepted reality and were living happily, except for Da Bao, who still had his reservations. They ate and slept and pooped every day. Da Bao, who just wanted to grow up, felt himself going numb. No matter how unhappy he was, all he could do was cry. But if he cried too much, his fish dad would start to feed him milk again, and Da Bao hated drinking milk from the bottom of his heart. He missed the fragrant, sweet peach blossom pastry dearly. Unfortunately, he'd heard the wet nurse say that babies needed to drink milk for 6 months before they should eat anything else. Sorry, there was something stuck in my book. Needed to drink milk for 6 months before they could eat other things. Da Bao used all his fingers and toes and still didn't manage to count 6 months. He felt like the peach blossom pastry was getting farther and farther away. He didn't really get it, and he couldn't understand why his younger brothers accepted it so readily, especially Sibao. That fish was never worried. Well, maybe that's why he accepted it so readily. Da Bao was right next to Sibao at that moment, and Sibao, who was being held by their fish dad as well, was currently munching on his hands. Da Bao admired him for that, and his baby instincts made him want to lift his own chubby fingers and shove them in his mouth. No, Da Bao told himself repeatedly. I'm a responsible older fish brother, and can't eat my hands like my younger brother is doing. But my mouth is itchy, and I want to chew. Da Bao, the most proper baby in the world, was holding himself back so much that he almost shed a tear. This is so cute. Sibao was enjoying munching away when he found Da Bao looking at him. The naive Sibao smiled lazily and warmly at his older brother, smearing his drool all over Da Bao's face, and went back to chewing on his fingers. Da Bao wanted to cry. Sibao's saliva was so gross, but why did he also want to do the same thing? Yeah, it's great that we actually get the baby's point of view. That's so funny. Liu had been watching them secretly for a long time as he held them in his arms, and he couldn't hold back his laughter. When he saw Prince Jing writing the letter, he had an idea. Da Bao, Air Bao, San Bao, Si Bao, why don't we write a letter to Grandpa too? The fish babies didn't know what an emperor was yet. Liu always called the emperor Grandpa in front of them because that's exactly who he was to them. Da Bao nodded quickly, excited. Been such a long time since his fish dad called out to him for something other than nursing. Sibao was a bit confused and didn't know what writing a letter meant, but he liked his fish dad, so he would do whatever he wanted him to. He nodded along with Da Bao. Tianxi, is that all right? Liu asked, tugging on Prince Jing's sleeve. Prince Jing loved hearing Xiao Yu call him by his name. He smiled and got out of his seat. Liu put two babies on the table as the other babies in Wang Shi's arms cried and fussed, wanting to reunite with the other two. The children's small bodies wrinkled the high-quality rice paper placed on the table, but Prince Jing, the paper's owner, wasn't distressed by this at all. The children couldn't touch the ink next to the paper, but Prince Jing was astute. He'd had the kitchen mix together some dark, harmless juice for them to use. It was pretty smart, honestly. Liu, who had checked with the wet nurse beforehand, applied the juice on the baby's hands. He'd heard that the emperor would often ask after the children, so Liu thought that he might appreciate something the children made themselves. The emperor had also conferred titles onto all 4 of the children, so they already had salaries. They should give thanks to the emperor for the fact that they'd never have to worry about money. I love that that's Liu's first concern, is like, they'll have the easy life. Instead of pondering over what gift to send in the children's name, why not let them write a letter with their father? It was a nice idea. The children were placed together on the table and greeted each other with cries of, "Ah!" Their hands were smeared with the ink, and they were all seated on the paper. There was no need to tell them what to do. They all got started immediately. When Da Bao was still a tiny, tiny fish, he'd seen a lot of words when he followed his father. Da Bao thought about it and determined he could probably write the word Da out. He started to concentrate on writing. Bao and Bao didn't know what they should do, but when they saw Da Bao begin, they followed his example and started to write the same word. Da Bao stopped immediately. No, this was something that only belonged to Da Bao. The younger brothers couldn't write it. Da Bao used his hands and feet to write and San hurriedly, then pushed it to his younger brothers. After a moment of contemplation, Bao and San Bao decided they didn't like it. They still thought their elder brother's Da looked nicer. We want older brothers. Bao widened his eyes like little glass beads, and San Bao reached out his chubby fingers. Their wails mingled together. Liu almost couldn't breathe from laughter. He turned Da Bao, Bao, and San Bao away from each other so they could each do their own thing. What kind of proper letter could such tiny babies write? The most they could do was probably a handprint. Meanwhile, Si Bao felt sleepy as soon as he saw the rice paper and was now sleeping face down on the paper with his butt in the air. Which one of them did this child resemble? You, my dude. It resembles you. In the end, Da Bao finally wrote the Da he remembered, and Bao and San Bao both left a handprint. Si Bao was still sleepy and accidentally left half of his face for his grandpa because he got ink on his cheek. That sounds so cute. Liu carefully blew the children's letter dry, folded them, and handed it all to Prince Jing. The emperor won't be angry, right? He asked, worried. Prince Jing smiled and shook his head. This fish. He was the one who came up with the idea, but he was also the one worrying about it afterward. Prince Jing put the children's letters with his letter of thanks in a large envelope and entrusted this huge responsibility to Yi Qinghuan. This envelope reset Yi Qinghuan's understanding of a letter. Prince Jing said it was a letter of gratitude. Why was it so thick? He always thought Prince Jing was cold and didn't care to please the emperor. Who knew he'd write so much? He was obviously as talkative as Wang Gong. Liu prepared a gift for the Princess of Jinju, too, and asked Yi Qinghuan to give it to her. The princess was pregnant, but he and Prince Jing were far away in the west. Liu probably wouldn't be able to congratulate her in person when the child was born, so he wanted to send gifts to her and the child in advance. He had a craftsman melt the small golden bracelets Da Bao and the others wore into a pretty lock charm. So a lock charm are common gifts for children meant to lock their safety and good luck to them. That was really sweet that he did it with the other babies' luck as well, because they're lucky fish. There was probably no lack of children's accessories at the house of Chang'en, but Liu had heard from Auntie Shu that things that children had worn were touched with good fortune. Since his 4 children were safe and healthy, combining the 4 bracelets together would give 4 times the fortune. To a pregnant woman, there was nothing more important than the safety of the mother and child. Yi Qinghuan accepted the gift on the princess's behalf, his eyes a little red. Thank you, cousin-in-law. He bowed with full respect. All right, we got a picture. I love it. Look at those proud parents and adorable little chubs. I love all of these pictures. They're just so cute. And the style fits so well with such a lighthearted book. Yi Qinghuan, right? I agree. Yi Qinghuan and the princess both knew Liu, so they usually called him Li Gonzi or consort. The sudden cousin-in-law surprised him, and he realized that it meant Yi Qinghuan recognized him as part of the family. Liu responded happily. Prince Jing glanced at Yi Qinghuan. This younger cousin of his, that he always looked at with slight disdain, was finally a bit more pleasing to the eyes. Yi Qinghuan hurried back to the capital. When the emperor received news from Prince Jing, or more precisely, when he received the letter that came with several more pages of rice paper that the children wrote, he was so excited that his hands started trembling. Prince Jing's children were only 100 days old. Were they able to write letters already? Curiosity piqued, the emperor unfolded the letters. The first piece of paper had a crooked word that looked a lot like Oa. The second and third pieces of paper had little handprints. And the fourth one, the emperor couldn't control the smile that rose to his lips. Wasn't this just the little baby's face, with a few drops of saliva too? He'd never met Prince Jing's children, but he could sense their vivid personalities through these papers. Luoru Shang, what do you think this means? The emperor pulled out the first piece of paper again and showed it to Luoru Shang. Luoru Shang looked at it for a bit and shook his head. The emperor read Prince Jing's letter again. At the end, he mentioned that these 4 papers were written by the children. The emperor realized that the first piece of paper must have come from Prince Jing's eldest son, who he'd already named as heir. Lu Ruosheng immediately said, Your Majesty, I do not know what the little shizzy meant when he wrote that word, but in my life so far, I've never seen a child start writing so young. The little shizzy will definitely be well educated in the future. Lu Ruosheng knew the emperor well, so he started praising Prince Jing's heir as soon as he opened his mouth. Of course, he wasn't permitted to casually speak about the royal grandson's future, lest he imply anything about anyone taking the throne from the emperor. But there was nothing wrong with saying he'd be well educated. This resounding flattery hit the emperor in the right spot, and he felt at peace as he admired the oa. He stared at it for a long time. He even wanted to ask Lu Ruosheng to frame it and hang it in Jiangcheng Palace. That's adorable. He's a very proud grandpa. Prince Jing's shizzy was so promising that it made the emperor think of the 7th and 8th princes in the palace. The 2 princes were still studying in the imperial study room. The emperor paid a visit himself to encourage them gently and give them a lot of homework, which included writing. An emperor's son couldn't do worse than an emperor's grandson, who wasn't even a year old, right? The little princes were suddenly burdened by homework and had no idea why. Oh, they unintentionally got punished a little bit. Oops. Not only was the emperor pleasant and cheerful to the 7th and 8th princes, but he also decided to choose... Okay, sorry. My computer just popped up with an update notification and it said your device will restart to update outside of active hours. I was like, no. Hang on. I'm doing something. No. But yeah. Not only was the emperor pleasant and cheerful to the 7th and 8th princes, but he also decided to choose the 2 most excellent students from the Hanlin Academy as future teachers for Prince Jing's children. Prince Jing had originally chosen a couple of teachers from the capital, but they weren't going to be needed anymore. News of the emperor's preparations made its way to the west. Liu was a bit speechless when he heard. Wasn't the emperor doting on these little babies too much? No, never too much. Tianqi, what does the Wa that Dabao wrote mean? Liu couldn't help but quietly ask Prince Jing. Why does the emperor like it so much? Prince Jing shook his head. He didn't know either. When he heard his father's talking, Dabao looked at his tender little hands and felt sorry for himself. Wa? He'd clearly written Da for Dabao. Oh. The word Dabao. Oh, chapter 103. Fishy children kisses. Fish children kissy, sorry. The word Dabao had written so carefully turned out to be wrong. Dabao was unhappy. Even the peach blossom pastries his fish dad put to the side while he was nursing didn't seem so fragrant anymore. Liu cared for the children very much, so he quickly realized Dabao was feeling off. He didn't know why, but usually spending time with his brothers helped him feel better when he was in a bad mood. Thus, Liu gathered the fish children in hopes that Erbao, Sanbao, and Sibao could make Dabao feel better. Erbao, Sanbao, and Sibao surrounded Dabao, who turned his chubby face away with tears in his eyes. His 3 brothers all had the same thought. Why is he unhappy? Even though they looked like babies, they were fish brothers who had been together for a long time and were very close to each other. Sibao remembered that when he felt sad, his fish dad would use his mouth to rub him, which made him very happy. Fish Daddy said that this was a kissy and that he should kiss the people he liked. Sibao liked his fathers and his brothers, so he should give his brother a kissy to make him happy. I got it. Ah! Sibao yelled, making Erbao and Sanbao look over. Sibao gave them a demonstration, puckering his lips and smacking a kiss on Dabao's cheek. Dabao wasn't sure what had just happened, but Erbao and Sanbao understood. They puckered their lips as well and moved closer. Dabao was so terrified his voice broke. Ah! What are you guys doing? Smooch, smooch. Ah! Save me! Dabao was continuously baptized by the love of his fish brothers, and he couldn't hold it together anymore. Erbao and Sanbao were all right with just kissing him, but Sibao was a weird one. Not only did he kiss his older brother, he wanted his older brother to kiss him back. He'd keep kissing Dabao until he did. Dabao, who was kissed so much by Sibao that his face was covered with drool, couldn't bear it anymore and gave in. Isn't it just a kissy? I can do it too. Dabao's eyes were filled with tears that threatened to spill over. He hugged Sibao with his little arms and little legs, then gave him a little kiss. Liu was watching the entire time. As expected of Sibao. Sibao was able to accomplish what Yi Qinghuan couldn't. After this incident, Liu found that Dabao had become much livelier than before. In the past, he usually stayed alone. He was just a baby, but he was always straight-faced and didn't mingle with the others. Now, whenever he saw the other children, his arms and legs would start dancing. Gaga, we're coming to kissy, said Airbao, Sanbao, and Happy Seabao. Dabao disdainfully shouted, "Ah! Get away!" The boys were in chaos. Look, Tianxi, Liu said to Prince Jing, feeling accomplished. Children have to be together to be happy. The corner of Prince Jing's mouth twitched. From what he could see, Dabao wasn't happy. But he wasn't going to reveal that. The most important thing was to make Xiao Yu happy. One thing of note that I find super interesting is, even though they have children, and clearly they love them, Prince Jing's, I don't want to say priority, but like he still holds Liu very, very, very high up. Like they're not just all focused on the kids. They still have a very healthy relationship themselves, which for first-time parents is very impressive. Mu Tianxiao was impeached for accepting bribes. He never committed any of the crimes himself, though, and just like every other time, someone under him took the blame instead. The emperor couldn't punish him directly, but had switched out all the people around him. That left a bad taste in his mouth. Mu Tianxiao had acquired his current position by betraying the third prince, so he'd never trusted his subordinates too much. He had very, very few trustworthy confidants. On the positive side, it was hard for secrets to be leaked, but on the other hand, with this single decree from the emperor, he no longer had anyone he could actually utilize. And it was all just because he desperately wanted to win over the Marquis of Dingbei of the Yu family. The Marquis of Dingbei's family and the House of Cheng'en were both centuries-old families. The Marquis was extremely hard to please, and he rarely helped his relatives out or did favors for them. The only person he doted on was his daughter, so Mu Tianxiao wanted to lock down that marriage. The Marquis of Dingbei and his daughter were true nobility and had lots of experience, so Mu Tianxiao couldn't win him over with just a few petty tricks. He had to take some risks to convince Marquis Dingbei to help him. His siphoning money from repairing Zongshui Palace shouldn't have been discovered so easily. Once everything was built and painted over, nobody would take it apart to look at it. So, when the wood merchant contacted him through his connections and wanted to do business with him, Mu Tianxiao knew that this was his opportunity to make a fortune. Additionally, he had subordinates who wanted to kiss up to him. This marriage hadn't been easy for Mu Tianxiao to achieve. Who could have predicted that Zhang Jing would find out, even though everything was so secretive? Zhang Jing even reported him to the emperor to get him impeached. Wasn't he afraid of offending him? Mu Tianxiao remembered that when he was ordered to renovate Zongshui Palace, Zhang Jing had taken him in under his wing like he had for Prince Jing. He was kind and caring towards him, so Mu Tianxiao had assumed that he was someone who had a discerning eye. But he was actually quite ruthless and stabbed him in the back. Mu Tianxiao wanted to get back at Zhang Jing, but firstly, he didn't have anyone to use, and secondly, Zhang Jing was an upright person. He was like a sheet of metal. He didn't have any weak spots for Mu Tianxiao to sink his teeth into. But no matter how ruthless Zhang Jing was, the emperor was more so. The decree the emperor issued seemed to perceive a lot of the six princes' dignity, since he wasn't given most of the blame and wasn't beaten. But the subordinates he had worked so hard to get were all gone. Mu Tianxiao hated the emperor, and he hated Zhang Jing even more. But this type of hate was the same as his background, feeble and powerless. He would rather have the emperor beat him a couple dozen times. Tianxiao. It's only a few. Tianxiao, it's just fewer people serving you. Mu Tianxiao's mother, consort Zhang, comforted him gently. Don't feel so bad. Why don't I give you some more maids? Since Mu Tianxiao's status had improved, there were people who had started trying to cling to consort Zhang, so she had much more confidence when speaking to her son now. But her words almost made Mu Tianxiao laugh. He couldn't help but tremble slightly. How funny. His mother could wear silver and gold because of him, but she didn't know what he needed the most. Meanwhile, Empress Xiaohua Huai had been dead for 20 years, but she still was able to protect Prince Jing. The House of Chang'an, Empress Xiaohuai's family, all supported Prince Jing so much. This was the difference between an empress and a palace servant. Dude, stop bashing on your mom. Wu Tianxiao never blamed his mother outright, but he told consort Zhang to be careful what she did. He couldn't let the emperor find out any further fault with him. Consort Zhang agreed. With the second and third prince as examples, at most she was just a bit more imposing behind closed doors. In front of the emperor, she was still a well-behaved quail. However, even though consort Zhang agreed to what Mu Tianxiao mentioned, she didn't think his caution was all that necessary. Right now, who else other than her son could be the emperor? And who could he choose? Mu Tianxiao had no manpower and couldn't act recklessly. He'd always suspected that there was something going on with Prince Jing's children, too, and he doubted Prince Jing's consort. Mu Tianxiao had sent a confidant to the west to investigate, who told him that he had a plan to capture the consort, but there'd been no further news. What do you want to bet it was Mr. Dogbite Hand? Mu Tianxiao was afraid that this confidant had disappeared, but he still hoped that he would actually find something to hold over Prince Jing, so he waited every day. But with a start, he realized that he had no time to relax when the emperor was visiting the imperial study and treating the seventh and eighth princes differently. Apart from Prince Jing, the emperor still had two younger sons who could ascend to the throne. Mu Tianxiao wanted the two younger princes to lose the emperor's favor somehow, but all of his confidants were gone, and he couldn't find anyone else to help him. Even though the two princes were still young and wouldn't be hard to deal with, he had no way to touch them himself. Just as he was mulling the issue over, someone came to him. Your Highness, I can help you and solve your problems. Chu Yenyu's misty eyes peeked out from behind the dangling veil of his bamboo hat, unblinking. Mu Tianxiao was quite shocked when he saw him. After Prince Jing had left the capital for the western border, the people residing in Qingshi Garden in his manor were each asked individually what they wanted to do. The ones who wanted to leave were allowed to leave. That was when Chu Yanyu left Prince Jing's manor. He'd been with Mu Tianxiao since he was a child and had nowhere else to go. He went to the Six Princes' manor to find him. Mu Tianxiao had let him stay, but at that time he'd learned that he was about to get married, so even though Chu Yanyu was right in front of him, he didn't get too close to him. And Chu Yanyu acted like he didn't exist. The only thing he did was run right up to Mu Tianxiao before he was leaving to meet his in-laws, to ask if Mu Tianxiao was really getting married. Mu Tianxiao had nothing to hide. When he'd shoved Chu Yanyu into Prince Jing's manor, Chu Yanyu should have known then that they would never be able to openly be together before the Sixth Prince reached his goals. The Sixth Prince had promised him that he would have a place for Chu Yanyu by his side, but it wouldn't be as his lawfully wedded partner. Even if the wife's position was vacant, it still wouldn't be Chu Yanyu. Mu Tianxiao desperately needed an heir. Mu Tianxiao was worried that Chu Yanyu would do something outlandish, but Chu Yanyu had just stood there in a daze and then walked away crestfallen. Even now that the sixth prince's consort had officially married into the family, she didn't know there was a Chu Gonzi in this manner. You what are you saying? How are you going to help me? Mu Tianxiao asked carefully, slightly expectant. Chu Yanyu was smart, and Mu Tianxiao knew he'd always had a place in Chu Yanyu's heart, ever since they were children. He trusted Chu Yanyu. The previous lack of progress at Prince Jing's manor was because Prince Jing had a strange personality. It couldn't be blamed on Chu Yanyu. Chu Yanyu paused. You need someone, he said. I can be your eyes and support in the harem. For real? Mu Tianxiao was ecstatic. His mother was slow-witted and wasn't favored, so if he had another form of support in the harem, that would be better than having a lot of subordinates. But you just came back from Prince Jing's. Is it that possible? Mu Tianxiao asked tentatively. Your Highness, you know that I have no relationship with Prince Jing. Chu Yanyu's voice was soft, tinged with the aggrievement that only existed between lovers. He had grown sallow and skinny at Prince Jing's manor, not pretty at all. But now that he was at Six Prince's manor, he had returned to his previous alluring self. Mu Tianxiao's heart thudded as he held one of Chu Yanyu's hands. I mean, you were at Prince Jing's manor before, and now you want to become an imperial concubine. Isn't that asking too much of you? You err. If you don't want to, you must tell me. You know I'm reluctant to part with you. Chu Yanyu shook his head gently. I only have one wish now, and that is to help you fulfill your goals. Please allow me. Chu Yanyu started to kneel as he said this, but Mu Tianxiao stopped him. He didn't doubt Chu Yanyu's feelings for him. Otherwise, why would he have agreed to enter Prince Jing's manor in the past? If Chu Yanyu could enter the palace... Mu Tianxiao's thoughts raced. Gorgeous women couldn't compare to Chu Yanyu's looks, and he would be the most beautiful in the emperor's harem, as it was right now. As long as Chu Yanyu was willing to do it, Mu Tianxiao felt quite confident in him. Mu Tianxiao made up his mind. He helped Chu Yanyu up, warmly saying, Come, get up. I'll leave it to you from now on, then. Chu Yanyu nodded. Through the veil, Mu Tianxiao couldn't see the slightly cryptic smile spreading across his face. It's my duty to help you, Your Highness. Chu Yanyu had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Mu Tianxiao was clever in placing Chu Yanyu. He took him to the palace as a bodyguard first, and consort Zhang as a maid who'd climbed into the emperor's bed while he was drunk, had some unique tricks. Shortly after, during the Double Ninth Festival, the emperor drank a little too much and stayed nearby in consort Zhang's Yongfu palace. The next day, there was a new person with charming looks that appeared in the palace. Noble Lord Chu. Chu Yanyu is a male imperial concubine now? When Wang Shi brought up the subject lightheartedly, Liu was shell-shocked. Could there be anything more bizarre than that? In the original book, there was one top and one bottom. Liu had married the top and had a bunch of fish children, but the bottom went to be together with the top's father? To become the top's stepfather? No, a male concubine was still a concubine, so he couldn't be his stepfather. Liu didn't know what to call him anymore. Wasn't he in the manor? How did he get into the palace? Liu was stunned for a while before it occurred to him to ask this question. Liu had originally thought that when they returned, Chu Yanyu would have been living in the manor for a whole year, so Prince Jing's anger would have subsided. Then he could ask Prince Jing to let Chu Yanyu go. But he never expected that Chu Yanyu would become an imperial concubine. How did he do that? Wang Shi glanced at Prince Jing's expression and said, "When His Highness and the consort left the capital, a lot of people in the manor were let go." So that's what happened. Prince Jing had allowed him to leave. Chu Yanyu hadn't escaped. Liu understood that Chu Yanyu didn't have any future in Prince Jing's manor, so after he was released, he would definitely go to the lover of his dreams, the Sixth Prince. So, how had he ended up in the palace? His Majesty got drunk at the banquet, and the Sixth Prince happened to go to Consort Zhang's palace with his guard. Wang Shi said vaguely, "I heard that noble Lord Chu was bestowed the title in Yangfu Palace." Wang Shi's words were veiled, but Liu had gleaned his meaning. Wasn't that just the Sixth Prince giving Chu Yanyu to the Emperor? Wu Tianxiao was still the same scumbag after a whole year. Was Chu Yanyu happy about that? Oh, he probably was. After all, Chu Yanyu's logic was different from other people's. He'd entered Prince Jing's manor for the Sixth Prince, too. Perhaps to Chu Yanyu there wasn't much difference between belonging to Prince Jing or belonging to the Emperor. Liu's thoughts ran wild until he noticed that the children were listening, especially Sibao, whose eyes were flickering. Liu knew that they could understand and quickly covered their ears. Getting drunk and bestowing favor on someone. Grandpa was a bit irresponsible. The children shouldn't be led astray by this. At the same time, Liu was also worried about Prince Jing. He wasn't afraid that Prince Jing had feelings for Chu Yanyu. That was impossible. But he was worried that this would affect Prince Jing's opinion of the Emperor. I love the sheer confidence that he now has in the feelings, where he's like, he wasn't worried that he would have feelings for this person. That was impossible. But he was worried that this would affect Prince Jing's opinion of the Emperor. As far as Prince Jing was concerned, and in the eyes of many others, the Emperor held deep feelings for Empress Xiao Huai. Would Prince Jing think that the Emperor had failed his mother? With these thoughts in mind, Liu forgot about covering the children's ears. He held Prince Jing's hand and said, "Tianxi, don't feel bad." The Emperor had an entire harem. Why would Prince Jing care? He didn't want to comment on the Emperor's decision. Purely to cooperate with Liu comforting him, the corners of Prince Jing's mouth pulled downward, but his eyes were full of deep affection. Liu held his arm and casually said, "Don't read too much into it. Why don't we try out the merman tonight?" He wanted to change things up so the prince wouldn't be sad. Prince Jing's lips curved, and he nodded obediently. Okay. He's like, oh, twist my arm. Why not? I'm so sad. So very sad. These two are hilarious, right? They're even more hilarious in this picture. Let's try out the mermaid tonight, sweetie. I love that they both are blushing. After the double ninth festival, the west had become colder. They could heat up the rooms and prepare a large tub. If he wasn't mistaken, their family would probably be setting off soon. As far as the Emperor was concerned, getting drunk and bestowing favor on someone was very embarrassing for him. It was especially embarrassing that it had happened in his concubine's palace, and even more embarrassing that it was a man, one of his son's bodyguards at that. The Emperor had to assume responsibility and take the man in. The Emperor was quite ashamed. He'd felt this annoyance before. There was a time he'd been drunk in Chengchun Palace and favored a maid called Zhang there. And here it was again. To make the annoyance go away, the emperor thought about Prince Jing. When he had ordered Prince Jing to leave the capital, the emperor had spent several hours pondering the decision. But this time, his mind had been made up for quite a while now, and he made the decision quickly. Luo Ruoshang, prepare a decree and have Prince Jing come back. So, we get back into the palace intrigue. Chapter 104, Fishy Back in the City. When the emperor's edict summoning Prince Jing back to the capital arrived, the children were already 6 months old. They could now eat some mushed rice in addition to drinking milk, and the peach blossom pastries they'd longed for all this time could be made into a paste and eaten too. They finally get their peach pastries. In ancient times, though, the imperial family was usually in no hurry to wean the children off of milk and would let them drink it for as long as they wanted. The wet nurse thought it would be the same at Prince Jing's home. Liu knew that in modern times babies could be weaned at 6 months, but local custom said that milk was nutritious and it was fine to drink it for longer. Unexpectedly, though, Da Bao refused to drink milk as soon as he hit 6 months and would only eat paste, so he weaned himself quickly off of milk. Following Da Bao's leadership, Air Bao, San Bao, and Si Bao soon also refused to drink milk. They stuck out their necks and clamored for rice mush, completely ignoring the wet nurse. If the wet nurse picked them up and tried to force feed them, even the 4th young master with his lovely temper and ready laughter would get upset, turning his body around and showing the wet nurse his butt. Oh, I love these babies. For the first time, the wet nurse felt alone. She was also having doubts about herself. Did the young masters not like her milk? Liu knew what was going on. The fish children weren't normal babies and had their own ideas, but Liu couldn't explain that to the wet nurse. He tried to comfort her anyway. When a family like Prince Jing's hired a wet nurse, they would have to take care of her for the rest of her life, so she didn't have to worry about the future. As there was no more need to breastfeed, Liu asked her to just look after the children, and she readily agreed. The young masters seemed very smart. Perhaps they were just different from the children of a normal family. At first, Prince Jing was a little worried about the children's health, but Liu assured him over and over again that weaning at 6 months wasn't a problem, and Prince Jing, of course, believed Xiao Yu. So the issue of the children's weaning quickly passed, and just like that. As soon as the emperor's edict arrived, Prince Jing ordered his things to be packed. Since he'd been expecting this for a while, the official affairs of the western border were pretty much handled already. So Prince Jing handed over official duties to the village head. The bandits had been dealt with, and the western border was now peaceful. As for the imperial guards that the emperor had sent to protect Prince Jing asked them to stay in the western border for a bit to help the village head. He'd also trained a group of young soldiers, and he handed them over to the village head as well. Official affairs were progressing smoothly with almost no issues. All that was left was to pack. Prince Jing was still unmarried before he came to the western border and brought his boyfriend Li Gonzi along, but now he was returning with his wife and 4 young masters. It wasn't just the number of people that had changed. There were multiple times more luggage than before. The children's clothes, toys, and diapers took up several carriages alone, and they had to bring along the wet nurse and other caretakers as well. There were also several physicians that had come with them to the western border, and the children's teachers that Prince Jing had hired back in the capital, who he was responsible for bringing back. Li Yu had married Prince Jing in Luofeng village and had his fish children there. The residence in Luofeng village held immense significance to him, like another home. He was reluctant to part with it, and after making his rounds, he wanted to bring everything he saw. The fish tank, crystal bottle, and all the fish plushies had to be brought along. He also wanted to bring the 2 ducks they were raising in the yard. These 2 ducks were the fluffy ducklings he'd brought back from the duck farm, which had since grown into fat ducks. Liu had said that the ducks would get ugly once they were grown up, but he secretly liked them a lot. Sibao, who'd watched the ducks grow up and get ugly, also liked them. Liu liked to eat roast duck, but he had never thought about roasting these ducks. I love that they always bring up the fact that Sibao and Liu are very similar, and Liu is just like, I wonder who this child reminds me of. Wang Shi followed Liu around and wrote down everything he wanted to bring. When he saw Liu hesitate, he smiled and said, Consort, please rethink this. The ducks won't be difficult to bring along. The ducks would be difficult to bring along. I really can't? Liu was a little reluctant. But if they're left behind, no one will take care of them. The servants in this manor have been hired by the village head, so there won't be anyone else living here, Wang Shi said. There will be some servants left behind who can feed them on time and take care of them. But Liu knew what Wang Shi meant and knew that this was normal, but if the ducks were left behind, he wouldn't get to see them again. Prince Jing was destined to become the emperor, and he knew this year they'd spent at the western border was just part of Prince Jing's journey to the throne. When they returned to the capital this time, Prince Jing would definitely show his brilliance, so he and Prince Jing would never be able to set foot on the western border again. Wang Gonggong, we really can't take them back? Aren't we bringing the fish too? Ducks don't take up too much space, and they can walk on their own, so it should be fine as long as we bring enough food, right? Liu kept thinking they should be able to find somewhere in the carriages to squeeze the ducks in. Wang Gonggong thought, how could bringing fish and bringing ducks be the same? Isn't it too crazy to drive 2 ducks from the western border to the capital? Wang Shi's lips twitched. They may not survive the difficult journey. Li Yu kept fighting for the ducks. Prince Jing, who could see him feeling troubled from a distance away, came over and held Li Yu's hand while glaring at Wang Shi reproachfully. A chill went down Wang Shi's spine, and he immediately changed his tune. Yes, we can probably bring them. I'll go make arrangements to bring these 2 ducks along. Prince Jing nodded, satisfied. He didn't necessarily want to blame Wang Shi. Wang Shi's logic was sound, but he knew that this home meant something different for Liu. When they left the capital, Xiao Yu didn't have many objections because he didn't have a proper title yet. Prince Jing's manor in the capital was more like a simple residence to Xiao Yu. But they'd gotten married and had children here, so Xiao Yu was the other master of this residence. He could obviously decide what to bring and what to leave behind. Just do what the consort wants, Prince Jing signaled with his eyes. Wang Shi nodded quickly, thinking that he'd probably just been confused earlier. How could he try and persuade Li Gonzi to change his mind? Li Gonzi was a consort and his master. He should fully support what his master wanted to do. Please give me a chance, consort, he said respectfully. I'll definitely complete this job. Liu didn't know what Prince Jing had hinted to Wang Shi, but since Wang Shi had agreed to take the ducks with him, he was happy beyond belief. Then I'll leave it to you, Wang Gonggong, he said. Wang Shi hurriedly replied, You're welcome, then rushed out to get things ready. He found a properly sized duck cage and asked the servants accompanying them if any of them knew how to take care of ducks. Since ducks couldn't stay in the carriage too long, he had to prepare another cart and put the duck cage there. It seemed like it wasn't impossible to bring the ducks after all. They just needed to be transported correctly. After that, no matter what Liu wanted to bring, Wang Shi simply nodded and took care of it. Wang Shi is the best. Like, I hope he has like a really nice house and like the best food. He deserves it. On the day of departure, Liu held his children and felt a little embarrassed as he stared at the line of carriages behind him. It seemed like he'd emptied out the entire manor. Yeah, he is such an MVP. Truly. Prince Jing smiled and squeezed his hand to tell him, "It's all right." Then he gave him a note. Another note? All right, Consort Yu was used to it by now. He took it to see what Prince Jing wanted to say. This time, what Prince Jing wanted to say was Xiao Yu's dowry. Liu's face instantly turned red. Dowry my ass! The carriage Liu rode on the way here had been very spacious, but Prince Jing made the carriage even larger this time. Originally, Wang Shi, the wet nurse, and the 4 children were supposed to be in a different carriage, but Liu insisted on keeping the children with him, unbothered by their crying. The fish children also wanted to stay near their fish father, so Prince Jing smiled and agreed. However, he didn't want Liu and the wet nurse to stay together for a long period of time in the same carriage, so he gave up his horse and got into the carriage with Liu to help look after the children with him. The wet nurse was left hung out to dry again, and she thought it was somewhat hard to believe. She quietly told Wang Shi about this, and he chuckled and said, "There's nothing strange about that. That's how Prince Jing spoils the consort and the 4 young masters. You're new, so you don't know yet, but there'll be many more incidents like this." The wet nurse fully believed Wang Gonggong's words. They set off with no issues, but after about half a mile, Wang Shi suddenly called for the carriage to stop and asked Liu and Prince Jing to look outside. Prince Jing opened the curtain of the carriage to see the citizens of the western border kneeling. The village had explained to Prince Jing that when the citizens heard he was returning to the capital, they wanted to come to send him off. Prince Jing had got rid of the bandits, exterminated the locusts, and helped the people flourish. The way they showed their thanks was very simple. They put all the good things they had, food or objects, into bamboo baskets to offer to Prince Jing and his consort. The old woman that Prince Jing had saved was there in the crowd holding her grandson, kowtowing nonstop. And the baby Liu had ordered the guards to retrieve from the bandits was also there. The baby's parents had later been found by the guards, and now they'd brought the baby over to see them. Liu's eyes were a little teary. He didn't know what he should say. Without saying a word, he waved to them just like he had on his wedding day. The people all shouted loudly, "We wish the prince and his consort peace and safety." The citizens were overly enthusiastic and gave them gifts like chickens, ducks, pigs, and sheep. They couldn't take all of it with them, so Prince Jing asked Liu to take care of it. After giving it some thought, Liu ordered Wang Shi to keep 2 red eggs and a roast duck as a souvenir. He knew the citizens didn't have it easy, so he persuaded them to take everything else back. Did I read that right? 2 red eggs. I wonder if it's like fertilized eggs or if they're a delicacy. Maybe it's food. It's probably food. The citizens sent them off again, and it was 2 hours before Prince Jing and Liu actually managed to leave Luofeng village. As Liu watched the people turn into small black dots in the distance, he thought to himself that if he had the opportunity in the future, he was going to do more for these lovely people. Prince Jing and the group had been in no hurry when they left the capital, and they were the same going back. They slowed down even more since the children were with them now, and Liu even developed a mood for seeing the sights. Probably because he's going to be stuck in the palace for a while now, right? Just like on the way there, every time they passed a town, Prince Jing would change up their diet and take Liu to try local foods. When they were wandering around an unfamiliar town, he would grab Liu's hand tightly, as if he was afraid Liu would suddenly fly away. Liu felt both moved and amused when he thought about the man who would take care of the children with him and always protected him. Despite believing Liu was a carp spirit, who said men never continued to cherish their partners after marriage? Prince Jing, at least, treated him better and better. The moment they arrived at the capital, the fish scamming system finally showed its presence with a new mission. It had been so long that Liu had almost forgotten it existed. Please note, the main quest line, Share the Country with the Tyrant, has begun. User, please view it promptly to obtain the mission information. Liu was excited when the mission finally appeared, but he calmed down quickly. Share the country? Did that mean what he thought it did? The fish scamming system's previous missions were mainly about nurturing their relationship, but this last one was a bit too difficult. Prince Jing could only think of the country after he ascended to the throne, which also meant that completing this mission would have to wait until the fight for the throne was decided in Prince Jing's favor. He'd been able to complete all the weird quests he'd gotten before, though, so it would be the same this time, right? Share the country with the tyrant. That was different from simple lovey-dovey behavior. No typical emperor or empress would say such a thing. Liu glanced at the man holding his hand, and he wondered if this man really loved him enough to share the country with him. A country was different from anything else, from everything else. It was something that many would give up family or love for. But Liu had promised to trust Prince Jing. He'd try to trust that they could finish this last mission with no issue. When they arrived in the capital, they had to enter the palace immediately to greet the emperor, even though they were all extremely tired. Prince Jing took Liu with him, and they each held 2 children. Wang Shi quickly ran to Qianqing Palace to deliver the message, and after receiving the emperor's orders, Luo Ruoshang waited for them outside the palace. As soon as he saw Prince Jing's family from a distance, he immediately rushed forward to greet them. Luo Ruoshang had never seen Liu before, so he bowed to him politely. When he saw Erbao and Sanbao in Liu's arms, as well as Dabao and Sibao in Prince Jing's arms, he couldn't help but smile. They really looked alike, especially the little heir. He looked like he was made from the same mold as Prince Jing when he was a baby. Head Eunuch Luo wanted to say a few more things, but the emperor couldn't wait anymore and walked out himself, calling out loudly, "Where's Prince Jing?" But before he could even finish speaking, the emperor stopped in his tracks. Prince Jing was standing a few feet away with a delicate and pretty young man cuddled up next to him, and they were both holding 2 children in their arms. When Prince Jing saw the emperor, he pulled Liu down to kneel in greeting. The emperor ordered head eunuch Luo to help them up and stared at Prince Jing for a while before saying emotionally, "You've gotten more tanned and you've bulked up." The emperor then turned to look at Liu next to Prince Jing. This young man's luminous eyes and rosy lips were very pleasing to the eye, he thought. He'd already guessed who this young man was, so he smiled and asked, "You're Liu?" Prince Jing gently squeezed Liu's hand under their sleeves, and Liu understood. He and the emperor weren't truly strangers, so he boldly called out, "Royal father." The emperor was delighted, as if he'd gained another son. When he looked at the 2 in front of him, he felt they matched each other very well in both appearance and temperament, making them a very suitable couple. He nodded kindly. Prince Jing was holding Dabao and Sibao. Liu had already told the babies on the way there, so Dabao knew that the man wearing strange, bright yellow clothes was his grandpa. But Dabao still didn't know how to talk, and he usually just drooled when he opened his mouth. Dabao was afraid of embarrassing himself, so he didn't open his mouth and instead copied the adults by putting his fists together and stretching them out to his grandpa. The emperor's gaze landed on Dabao immediately, and he paused. After a while, he smiled and said, "Tianxi, this child looks just like you when you were a child, a little Chubs." Prince Jing, who had been looking for little Chubs for a long time, was stunned to hear this. Neither Wang Shi, Yi Qinghuan, nor anyone else would ever dare call Prince Jing little Chubs. Only the emperor was so fearless. Prince Jing suddenly realized. Was the little Chubs Liu was talking about that one time actually himself? He finally found out. One moment. I can hear myself getting nasally again. Chapter 105, Fish Children Meeting the Emperor. The emperor was right in front of them, so Prince Jing couldn't ask Liu straight away. He decided to put it aside for now. The emperor was overjoyed when he saw Dabao, just as Liu expected. He glanced at Prince Jing, then stepped forward with Erbao and Sanbao as well. When the emperor saw the other two chubby children, he was ecstatic. Erbao and Sanbao weren't as concerned with their image as Dabao was, so when they saw their grandpa, they opened their mouths to shout, but ended up just drooling a lot. Erbao pointed to the dragon on the emperor's clothes, then smiled and clapped his hands. He'd seen this before. Ah, snake! The sound was clear and crisp, very healthy. So, they only said ah, but the kid meant snake. Just to clarify, he did not say snake. The emperor patted the chubby little boy's head in surprise. Sanbao, not to be outdone, yelled back even louder. Ah! A centipede! Where have you been seeing centipedes, little child? The emperor patted the other chubby little boy's head too, amused. Dabao was sulking on his own. Erbao and Sanbao were dummies. That was a dragon! Fishfather had told him before that the long thing on Grandpa's clothes was a dragon. Stop talking. Listen to me. But as soon as Dabao opened his mouth, drool flowed out. Dabao decided being embarrassed was fine, so he strained until his face was red to force out a "Pa?" Dabao wanted to cover his face after he heard his own voice. What was going on? He was the first to say daddy, clearly, so why was he calling Grandpa all weird? Being human is too hard. I want to be a fish again. The emperor had heard him, and he teased Dabao by asking, Dabao, what are you trying to say? Dabao did his best and clenched his little fist. Grandpa? The emperor thought he must have heard incorrectly. Liu smiled and confirmed. Royal father, he's calling for you. Please forgive me. At home, no, on the western border, we always call you Grandpa in front of him. The emperor had never had a grandson who'd called him Grandpa before. They all called him the proper royal grandfather. But when Prince Jing's little heir suddenly called him Grandpa, even though he stuttered and didn't pronounce it quite right, the emperor was so happy that his beard almost stood on end. This baby could call him Grandpa even though he was only 10 months old. He would definitely be a smart child in the future. Anyway, he was his grandson. It was normal for him to call him Grandpa. Wasn't that what ordinary families did? The position of emperor was a very high one to be in, but he also wanted to experience the simple joys of a family. I love how he's um like convincing himself like, it's fine. Like I I get to experience the simple joys of a family too. The imperial family had a saying, embrace your grandson but not your son. The emperor had been talking about Prince Jing for months now, and Prince Jing was finally back. But the emperor could only say a few things to him. He couldn't be overly affectionate. But the little grandson was different. Since he was from a later generation, the emperor could embrace him however he wanted. The emperor, who forgot his son now that his grandson was here, lifted Dabao up. Liu Rusheng and Prince Jing quickly helped the emperor. Dabao was well taken care of, and he was a little heavy. The emperor used quite a bit of strength and held Dabao firmly. After catching his breath, he turned around and smiled at Prince Jing, saying, Little Chubbs is quite heavy. Prince Jing felt a bit bewildered. The emperor held Dabao in his embrace, and Dabao was obedient and didn't cry. His little chubby arms went around the emperor's neck, and the grandpa-grandson pair seemed very close. Liu was afraid the emperor would get tired, so he wanted to take Dabao back, but the emperor waved him away. Dabao was a little heavy, but the emperor enjoyed the fact that Dabao wasn't afraid of him. After all, when his other grandsons saw him, they were like mice that had seen a cat. They weren't as close to him as the grandsons from Prince Jing's family. Not only did the emperor not allow anyone to take Dabao away, but he also waved Liu over. Liu understood. He walked over with Airbao and Sanbao. The emperor made Liu Rusheng bring each child over to sit on his lap. Royal father, this is too heavy, Liu protested, a bit embarrassed. The emperor's childishness started showing, and he shushed Liu. Let them sit here for a bit. Since I'm holding Dabao, the others will be upset if I don't hold them too. Liu was speechless. He didn't notice the other children getting unhappy. Was the emperor trying to start something? The emperor counted the little butts in his lap and found he was missing one. What about Sibao? Sibao was sleeping soundly in Prince Jing's arms. He was tired from all the traveling, and the fish children had a very good habit of not waking up once they were asleep. That's a blessing right there. That's magic. Like, I can tell you that from taking care of my nieces and nephews. Like, that is a superpower in itself. This meeting with the emperor didn't even bother him. Prince Jing put Sibao in the emperor's arms too, after the emperor kept urging him to. Sibao, who was sleeping very well, was welcomed by his brothers. Airbao and Sanbao started waving their little arms and legs in a dance, patting Sibao awake. Sibao sat up, rubbed his eyes, and saw the emperor holding him. Who is this? Sibao ate his hands and tried to recall. His fish dad told him they were going to see Grandpa, but Sibao got sleepy and took a little nap. So this was Grandpa. Ah, Grandpa! In his excitement, Sibao accidentally spit out his drool and nearly choked on his saliva. So graceful. The emperor almost gave himself an internal injury holding back his laughter. As soon as Sibao opened his eyes, the emperor could tell that he looked a lot like Liu. If he had any doubts that Liu had really given birth to the children before, it was gone the moment he saw them. Children resembled their parents. This was an unchanging truth. The emperor had a bunch of stuff he wanted to tell Prince Jing, but he forgot it all as soon as the children landed in his lap. He became completely engrossed in playing with them. Liu Rusheng had to remind him quietly several times before he remembered that Prince Jing's family had come to see him first thing when they had arrived at the capital. Upon closer inspection, Prince Jing and Liu both looked exhausted. The emperor comforted them a bit, then told them to go get some rest and leave the children with him. But then he looked around and realized that there was no place suitable in the palace for children that small. The children had been forced to travel with the adults, so they must be even more tired. The emperor knew that he couldn't keep them for any longer. He smiled and said, "Rest for 3 days. Come to the palace afterward and burn some incense for your royal mother so she can see the children. I think she would be very happy." As the emperor spoke, he looked up at Prince Jing's family and felt a little choked up. If Emperor Xiao Huai was still here and the eldest and fourth prince were still alive, with Prince Jing, the eldest and fourth prince would have had children by now, too. How lovely that would have been. The emperor's smile faded a little. Go on, then. Prince Jing nodded and led Liu and the children away. When they left the palace, Prince Jing patted Liu's hand. The emperor's expression hadn't looked so great at the end, so he was afraid Liu might misunderstand. I know, Liu said softly. I won't take it the wrong way. The emperor had clearly made himself sad by mentioning Emperor Xiao Huai. A warm, dry hand held Prince Jing's hand in return. Tianxi, don't be sad. Prince Jing stared at Liu, and his heart felt a little warm current that was flowing through it. Xiao Yu often told him to not be sad. Truth be told, Prince Jing was used to it by now, so he wasn't sad. But every time Liu tried to comfort him and cared for him, Prince Jing felt immensely happy. Looking down, he saw that all the children were asleep. Sibao rolled over, drooling on Prince Jing. It was late when they got back to the manor. Wang Shi had already ordered the servants to clean up the rooms and make the beds. The room was just as it had been when they had left, except for the addition of Prince Jing's new painting of a school of carp. It signified that the master had returned. Prince Jing had just settled the children and the ducks when he turned around and saw Liu fall asleep on the bed. He had buried his head in the green quilt with gold edges and started breathing steadily. He was so exhausted that he hadn't even taken off the shoes on his feet. Prince Jing felt for him, so after a moment of thought, he exited the room quietly and brought back a warm basin of water into the room. He gently removed Liu's shoes and socks, then soaked Liu's feet in the water. During the trip from the western border, there hadn't been much time to relax other than the occasional stay at an inn. Xiao Yu must be tired. It must have been difficult for the carp spirit to follow him around all this time. Prince Jing wiped down the tops of Liu's feet and gently rubbed the soles. Liu hummed in comfort, but he didn't wake up. Prince Jing wiped his feet clean, took off his robes, and placed him under the brocade quilt. Then he took off his own clothes and snuggled in as well. Liu hadn't slept on a solid bed for a long time, and he didn't know how long he ended up sleeping for. He could now transform into human for a whole day. For convenience, he usually transformed in the middle of the night. He could maintain human form until midnight of the next day, then transform into a fish for a second before turning human again. It was a bit troublesome, but he was usually with Prince Jing in the middle of the night. With Prince Jing shielding him, there was nothing that could go wrong, and no need to worry about his secret being revealed during the daytime. When Liu woke up, he automatically felt his body to check. He had arms and legs, so he hadn't turned into a fish. A full day hadn't passed yet. I mean, that's one way to keep time. Prince Jing was lying next to him, eyes closed and unmoving, as if asleep. Liu turned around and kicked off the quilt. His feet had been in unbearable pain when he had fallen asleep, but they didn't hurt anymore. Not only was the pain gone, but he felt like he could go to the palace and back several times over. Was sleep a cure for foot pain? Liu looked at his feet and noticed that his shoes and socks had been removed. Then, when he glanced at the copper basin on the ground, he realized that the reason why his feet weren't in pain anymore wasn't because of sleeping, but because someone had massaged and soaked them. Who else would do something so extreme besides Prince Jing? Liu laid back down, his face against the other person's sturdy back, smelling his familiar scent. He asked hesitantly, Tianxi? He had only called out once when Prince Jing turned around and stared at him with eyes as deep as a dark pool. Liu clutched his chest. That scared me. You haven't slept yet? Prince Jing nodded. Why wasn't he asleep? Because of his fish, of course. It had to do with little chubs. Oh, he's still bothered by it. Prince Jing had heard Zen Master Liao Kong mention that Liu had saved him from drowning when he was a child. Prince Jing couldn't actually remember much because of the high fever he developed afterward, but he believed it. Xiao Yu had come because of him. Though Xiao Yu never mentioned or admitted it, he more or less had enough evidence now. After Liu let little Chub slip out when he was dreaming, Prince Jing had hunted for that person for a very long time. But he had never found the culprit. He even got jealous of this mysterious fat man. But now that he'd learned from the Emperor that he was called Little Chubs when he was younger, he came to a realization. No wonder he could never find Little Chubs. He was Little Chubs. The Emperor Wang Shi and Yi Qinghuan, knowing the nickname, was only to be expected. But how could Xiao Yu be aware of it? It must be because he'd seen him when he was younger. Xiao Yu had saved him. Prince Jing was extremely happy to learn that his love rival was actually himself. If he'd had a tail, His Highness would probably have started waving it. But Xiao Yu didn't know that he had been looking for little Chubs this entire time, so Prince Jing couldn't properly express the happiness in his heart. Xiao Yu had made him promise in the past to not ask where he came from. Prince Jing was sure he had some sort of reason to refuse to admit that he had saved him in the past. All right, he decided. He wouldn't let Xiao Yu know that little Chubs knew everything. Tianxi? Liu called out in a soft voice, his eyes bright and gleaming. Prince Jing turned around and kissed him, interlocking their fingers. Liu was walking a bit stiffly the next day. It was different from the foot pain he'd had. It was his legs that were sore this time. I do appreciate the comedy when they do fade to black, because it's pretty funny. Sorry. Itchy. All of a sudden, my ankle started itching. It was weird. Chapter 106, Fishy Bath. The day after Prince Jing and Liu returned home, Yi Qinghuan heard they were back and came to personally announce good news to them. The Princess of Jinju had given birth to a daughter 2 months ago, and Yi Qinghuan was beside himself with joy. While Prince Jing and the group were on the road, they hadn't really been able to receive any news, so this was the first they'd heard of it. Yi Qinghuan now had a daughter, and he was like a little honeybee buzzing about her nonstop. She's so tiny, and her face isn't even as large as my palm, but she's so cute. I've never seen such a cute little girl. He's such a daddy's girl. Oh my gosh, that little girl is going to be so protected. Prince Jing thought he was noisy, but it was Yi Qinghuan's first time being a father, and to a precious daughter at that. He had to yell about it, even if he got kicked out. Prince Jing wasn't much better in that aspect, though. He had incubated the fish eggs himself, and the day the fish children hatched, he'd been smiling all day. He wasn't any calmer than Yichizi. Liu, who knew the truth, laughed out loud. A contest between Prince Jing and Yichizi over who is the most doting father would be an uncontested draw. But a daughter. Liu had only interacted with his fish sons, and when he thought about a cute, well-behaved little girl, like a little flower, well, he quite wanted one himself. He couldn't help but touch his flat tummy. It'd been a year since he'd given birth to the fish children. Since he'd been a fish when it happened, it practically had no effect on his body. After that, he and Prince Jing had done it many times. Though the one-and-done buff was gone, the system said he could conceive normally, which meant that he could still have children. But he'd been on the receiving end for a year now and still hadn't received anything, so weren't the chances a bit too low? After seeing how cute the fish children were, Liu was willing to try a second time, even if it was a little difficult. Prince Jing had worked really hard last night. They'd been on the road for so long with almost no healthy adult life to speak of, so he'd saved up a lot of energy. Would Liu get pregnant from that? But he was a fish with a system. If he was pregnant, the system would definitely give him a notification, like the last time when he'd had to choose between human form or fish form. It should happen every time he got pregnant, but he didn't hear a notification last night. It looked like the revolution was not yet achieved, and Comrade Tianxi needed to work harder. Liu looked at his husband's waist with a smoldering gaze. Yi Qinghuan was still yapping, but Prince Jing couldn't take it anymore. He ordered Wang Shi to carry him out with 2 thick red envelopes. Yi Qinghuan held the red envelope and suddenly realized. Tianxi, are you perhaps jealous that I have such a cute daughter? Prince Jing stared at him. I'm not jealous. Get out. When Yi Qinghuan and the princess's daughter turned 1 month old, the emperor gave her the title of Qinghe Junshu. Qinghe Junshu. Junju. Okay, let me try that one more time. Qinghe Junshu. Junshu. There we go. Qinghe Junju. The emperor was quite generous with the younger generation. The little princess was still too young to visit him, so Liu went over to visit Yi Qinghuan and chatted with him for a bit before agreeing to bring the fish children to little Qinghe Junshu's 100-day celebration. Don't forget to bring Xiao Yu and his little fish too, Yi Qinghuan reminded him. The princess is always talking about your family's fish. I guess I'll have to clone myself somehow, Liu thought. Liu quickly looked at Prince Jing, trying to ask for help. He would need to bring his fish children and a bunch of fish plushies and turn into a real fish that day. It was definitely too much for him, so it would be best if Prince Jing could give him a bit of a hand. Prince Jing lightly coughed and turned his face away as if he didn't see. Who asked this carp spirit to be so eager to see the little princess? What? You look sad. Everything had been fine just now, so why did Prince Jing suddenly get all upset? There's a little bug flying around my head. Yi Qinghuan had just left when Luo Gong arrived with a plethora of rewards in tow. The emperor couldn't give Prince Jing a sizable reward, but he liked the 4 children a lot, so he gave the rewards to the children instead. The list of rewards was so long that Luo Gong's throat nearly started smoking. Wang Shi thoughtfully gave him a cup of tea, and Luo Gong took a sip before happily continuing to read. Liu stood next to Prince Jing, respectfully listening and silently speechless. Jewelry, fabrics, antiques, calligraphy, those weren't special. But there were also bows, arrows, horses, and the 4 books and 5 classics. The Emperor had a clear plan for the next decade of the children's lives. Okay, so the 4 treasures of study: brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. So the 5, and then the 5 classics are like the 5 classics to be a gentleman, I think. I know they're talked about like with the gentry. So like to be a scholar, you need to know the 5 classics and the 4 books. So like the skills of brush, ink, paper, sandstone. But like I think it's like calligraphy, archery, horse riding. I think music's in there, and poetry. I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure about those. Here, we could info break. The 5 classics. Classics. And the 4 books. Okay. Explain. Okay, the 4 books and the 5 classics are the 2 main bodies of Confucian classics, fundamental to the Confucian canon and the imperial examination system in China. So I was right about the examination system. The 5 classics, or Wujing, are older, containing historical, poetic, and philosophical works like the Book of Poetry and the Book of Changes. The 4 books, or Shishu, are a later collection compiled by Xue Shi during the Song dynasty, emphasizing moral and ethical teachings from Confucius and his followers, including the Analects and Mencius. So, and then the 5 classics. These are the older texts recognized as the core of Confucian thought and culture. So, the classic of poetry, an anthology of ancient poems and songs reflecting the life and values of the Shou dynasty. Book of Documents, a collection of historical records, official documents, and speeches from ancient Chinese emperors and officials. Book of Changes, a manual for divination containing philosophical appendices that explore cosmic principles. Book of Rites, a compendium of ritual conduct, social forms, and governmental organization from the Shou dynasty. Spring and Autumn Annals, a chronicle of historical events during the late Shou dynasty, often studied with the Zhou commentary. Okay, so in more depth, the 4 books. These texts were compiled by the Neo-Confucian scholar Xue Shi to provide a more focused ethical and moral foundation for students, becoming central to the Confucian curriculum. So, The Great Learning, a guide for moral self-cultivation and personal development, outlining a path for successful attainment of any goal. The Doctrine of the Mean, a text emphasizing the importance of balance, harmony, and self-control in one's life and character. The Analects, a collection of sayings and deeds of Confucius compiled by his disciples to offer philosophical guidance. And the Mencius, a collection of the teachings and philosophical discussions of the philosopher Mencius, considered a successor to Confucius. I know that was a little bit of an info dump, but that was really interesting because I've heard of the 4 books, and especially the 5 classics, whenever they were talking about like a scholar or ascending to like a certain rank, like they had to know the 5 classics. But yeah, that was cool. Okay. So, the emperor had a clear plan for the next decade of the children's lives. Most of the rewards were given in fours, but the last one was different. The emperor gave Dabao a set of 4 treasures of the study and a jade ruyi, but the other children each received 2 bags of golden ingots with the words peace and auspiciousness etched onto them. The emperor was clearly giving Dabao special treatment. Prince Jing smiled and looked at Wang Shi, who immediately explained to Liu, Consort. The eldest young master is the heir, so his reward is a little bigger. Liu nodded. He knew that the eldest son in ancient times held a special position, but the children wouldn't start fighting because of this, right? He recalled that back when the boys had been fish, when he'd put Sibao on his head, the other children would get jealous. Liu normally tried to pay attention to this. For example, Dabao was smarter than most babies and attracted more attention, but Prince Jing liked to hold Sibao a little more. When Liu realized this, he made sure to hold Erbao and Sanbao more often so they wouldn't feel left out. But if the gifts were different, how was he going to make the children understand why Dabao was different? If Prince Jing stayed a prince, then Dabao would inherit the title of prince. If Prince Jing ascended the throne in the future, then Dabao would most likely become the crown prince. One little difference could change everything. This was probably the most difficult thing for normal princes to accept. Since Liu had given birth to the fish children, Dai or Shu wasn't a consideration, only their age. But truthfully, age was a bit confusing too, because Liu had laid the eggs in his sleep and didn't know which baby's egg came out first. Prince Jing had determined their ages when they hatched, but they went by the order their eggs were laid in. Dabao might not actually be the eldest son. Would the other children be unhappy because of that? Liu carefully observed them for 2 days. The fish children ate and slept as normal. There was no unhappiness to speak of. Except on the day the gifts were given, Dabao was almost covered in drool from the kisses the other children gave him. Liu concluded that the fish children were still too young to worry about it. Even if they were different from normal children and had spent some time as young fish, they still couldn't understand complex things like rights and status. It was better to leave such things for later and let them live a happy childhood. Their father, Prince Jing, hadn't ascended the throne yet, so there wasn't really any need to worry about all that for now. Just as he was deciding to let this go, something else unexpected happened. All at once, the fish children started throwing tantrums. Liu remembered the last time they were this upset was because they were getting weaned from milk, so he was confused. The conditions in the capital were better, so shouldn't the fish children be happier? Liu himself was definitely happier. When they got back, he overheard Wang Gonggong saying that Prince Jing had brought a Quanjued roast duck master from the western border to open another location in the capital. Wasn't that just to make him happy? Liu was very self-aware. He was waiting for Prince Jing to take him out to eat roast duck. Why did he suddenly start thinking about food? Liu quickly wiped away the drool on his face. He was trying to care for his fish children. The fish children had just moved back into the manor and were doing fine. They started throwing tantrums the day after Prince Jing and Liu held them in their arms and showed them around the manor. The manor was their home. Was there something wrong with walking through their own home? After Liu gave it a lot of thought, he realized that Sibao was facing the window yelling, "Ah!" as if he wanted to see something. Liu carried Sibao over. Outside the window was a corner of the huge fish pond that Prince Jing had built for him, the clear water rippling. "Ah! I want to swim!" Sibao raised his chubby hand, pointed at the pond, and looked back at his fish father with tears in his eyes. Now that Seabao had expressed his desires, the other fish children started pointing to the pond as well, calling out to their fish father. Dabao, who was the most mature, yelled the loudest. I love that sentence. Dabao, who was the most mature, yelled the loudest. So that's what it was. Liu finally understood why the fish children weren't happy. The children could only look at the huge pond in the manor. They couldn't swim in it. No wonder they were upset. Prince Jing wasn't in the manor house because he had some business to attend to, but Liu had an idea. He had Wang Shi bring a large bathtub filled with warm water. He undressed the children, put a little towel around each of them, hung a small piece of wood around their bodies, and let them swim in the water while they held the wood. When the 4 children got in the water and found they couldn't swim like they used to, they realized they had no tail on their butt to swing around anymore. They were incredibly sad and all started crying and wailing at once. Liu hadn't expected them to cry when they were in the water, too, so he got in the water and stayed with them. Crowding around Liu like when they were young fish, the fish children felt a little better. Liu stayed in the bathtub for a while. Something suddenly occurred to him. How could he forget the bubbles? He took a dry piece of cloth to hastily cover himself up. He had cleared out all the servants in the room, so it was only him and his fish children. Kind of streaking, but not really shouldn't be a problem, right? With his modesty thus preserved, Liu ran out of the bathtub and grabbed a bunch of bath beans, which were the ancient version of soap. He ground up a bath bean and dissolved it in a bamboo container, then twisted some wire to make a good-sized loop. Now that he was ready, Liu ran back to the babies, dipped the wire into the soapy water of the bamboo tube, puffed up his cheeks, and blew in the direction of the tub. All right, I'm glad he made the bubbles, but also just, like, as someone who's taking care of babies, it gives me more than slight anxiety that he left all 4 of his, 6-month-old babies. I know they've got the wood and they're swimming around and they were like fish babies before, but they're babies right now. He just didn't think about leaving his babies swimming around in the tub. Maybe it's small, but I'm just thinking babies can drown really easily. So that's I'm glad you're making bubbles, dude. But take your babies out of the water while you're making the bubbles, please. Slight miscalculation there. I'm glad they're fine. I know they're fine. But don't do that. That's a no. Now that he was ready, Liu ran back to the babies, dipped the wire into the soapy water of the bamboo tube, puffed up his cheeks, and blew in the direction of the tub. His efforts were rewarded. He actually blew an iridescent bubble. Wow, Fish Dad was blowing bubbles! The fish children in the bathtub immediately forgot about the no-tail problem and swam around chasing the bubbles. Prince Jing had gone out to do business, but when he came back, he found that the door to Xiao Yu's room was closed and the servants had gone elsewhere. Prince Jing opened the door to take a peek, curious, and saw the carp spirit wrapped in a cloth running back and forth, his long, slender legs dazzling. So, Liu was taking a bath with the fish children. Prince Jing remembered the time he'd played with Xiao Yu in the bathtub before. Slightly different time, my friend. So how could he miss out now? He immediately got into the bathtub with a smile. After 3 days of carefree respite in the manor, the day they'd been ordered to return to the palace came. Head eunuch Luo sent someone to Prince Jing's manor early in the morning to remind him. Liu put the fish children in little bright red robes and tied bibs around their necks. Each bib's color was the original color of the corresponding fish child, and there was a circle of swimming fish around the edges. That sounds adorable. He and Prince Jing changed into clothes appropriate for a prince and his consort. When they met the emperor the first time, they had just gotten back, so they didn't place too much importance on their attire. This meeting, however, was much more formal. The dragon on Prince Jing's clothing and the phoenix on Liu's were indispensable, but there was also fish embroidered onto in inconspicuous places like his cuffs and collar, and the patterns were complementary. Now, after the wedding, Liu felt that Prince Jing's expressions of affection, both openly and secretly, had improved. Though the main goal of the trip this time was to greet Empress Xiaohui in Changchun Palace, they still had to meet the emperor first. However, before they stepped foot in Qianqing Palace, head eunuch Luo came out to tell them that the emperor was currently meeting someone else inside. Head eunuch Luo stuck out his thumb and pinky, making a 6 gesture, and sighed. The emperor didn't expect this either. He usually enters the palace around noon, but he came early in the morning this time and even brought his consort. Seems like he's waiting for your highness. Liu gently clasped his hands together in gratitude to head eunuch Luo for warning Prince Jing. Luo Ruosheng often spoke in favor of Prince Jing, but it was inconvenient for a prince to express his thanks, so Liu thanked him in his place. As the famous saying went, a husband and a husband are one. The initial saying is a husband and wife are one, but I like that he, without blinking, a husband and a husband are one, which is true. It's the reason they're called partners. Luo Ruosheng hurriedly said there was no need, and Liu quickly finished his bow. Prince Jing smiled and rubbed the top of his head. Who cared about the 6th prince anyway? Liu and Prince Jing still carried their children into the palace. Mu Tianxiao was talking to the emperor, his voice full of joy. When I heard such great news, I came to tell you immediately, royal father, Mu Tianxiao said with a smile. Liu had only heard the tail end of it, so he had no idea what the great news was. But even though the emperor had heard all of it, his reaction was much less enthusiastic than the 6th prince had expected. He just furrowed his brows and stared inquiringly at the 6th prince's consort beside him. The consort nodded, embarrassed, and the emperor quickly ordered head eunuch Luo to bring a chair over for her to sit down and rest. But there was no chair for the 6th prince. Mu Tianxiao was the only one left standing, and he looked a bit awkward. Royal father! Liu called from behind, hopefully without his voice cracking like mine did. Da Bao knew his grandpa now, and even though they were still far away, he opened his arms and laughed, drool falling from his mouth. Grandpa! The emperor acknowledged his repose and said happily, I haven't seen him in 3 days, but it feels like Da Bao is already getting better at speaking. Oh, he's such a simp for his grandbabies. Liu couldn't believe it. He's not. Da Bao isn't. Emperor, please, don't get too excited. The emperor held Da Bao on his lap, and Mu Tianxiao's eyes widened in disbelief. Since when was the emperor so affectionate with his grandchildren? Da Bao took out a calligraphy brush from his little robes. He'd insisted on taking it with him before they left. It was one of the gifts the emperor had sent a few days ago. Da Bao, you're so smart. Do you want to learn how to write? Grandpa will teach you how to hold it, the emperor said, smiling and holding Da Bao's chubby little hand. Liu thought it was too tragic to look at. Da Bao had to hold the brush with both hands, and it was almost as large as he was. How was he going to write? But if the emperor thought he could, then so be it. He gave Da Bao some pointers with great enthusiasm. Da Bao put on his serious face and listened carefully. When Dabao scribbled "Ua" again, the emperor's smile practically split his face in half. Liu was convinced that the emperor had fallen under Dabao's spell. It was inconvenient for the emperor to hold the other children at the same time, but he held Airbao and Sanbao's tender little hands and got covered with Sibao's happy drool, laughing heartily. The sixth prince stared at Dabao in the emperor's arms with a sinister gaze, and he couldn't help but say, "Royal father, Suyun is also... If she's pregnant, then take good care of her," the emperor said mildly, without looking up. He was still playing with Dabao. "You don't have to come and tell me yourself. I will send an imperial physician to check her pulse every day." The emperor didn't bother hiding his dissatisfaction with the sixth prince. The sixth prince's consort being pregnant was a good thing, and he was very happy when he heard the news. But the sixth prince was announcing it too deliberately, and he'd even dragged his consort with him when he came. How could he make his newly pregnant wife kneel to greet the emperor and force her to run around everywhere to report the news? The sixth prince's actions could at best be interpreted as ignorance of a new father, but at worst, he was using his child to gain favor and didn't actually care for the little life that was in his princess consort's belly. Coupled with the timing of when the sixth prince had entered the palace, how could the emperor not notice what his intention was? Dabao was the smartest. What was the problem with spoiling him a little more? The emperor coldly thought, "Why are you competing for my favor when your child isn't even born yet?" Okay. We have one more chapter for tonight. I love that the emperor really does, seem to really care about his grandchildren. How's everybody doing so far? I know we're on the last chapter, but I'm just curious. Still hanging in? I know it's pretty late for some of you. You know what? I'm going to blow my nose again. So I'll be nice and clear for the last chapter. Yay. Chapter 107, Fish Children's Friendliness. Mu Tianxiao sensed the emperor's coldness and retreated angrily, pulling his consort out of the palace. "Be nice, she's pregnant." His consort, Liang Suyun, wanted to watch Prince Jing's children a bit longer. The elders said that one was more likely to birth a son if one looked at boys while one was pregnant. She knew that her husband was a prince, so he'd be eager for his first child to be a son. She didn't really want to go, but Mu Tianxiao pulled her away with a lot of strength, and she was practically dragged away. She couldn't damage the sixth prince's reputation while in Qianqing Palace, so she waited until they left the palace before she rubbed her wrist vigorously, complaining a bit. Before she had been married, she was dearly loved by her parents and had never suffered. After she married the sixth prince, Mu Tianxiao had been attentive to her every want and never so much as lost his temper around her. Good. I'm glad. Why was he so rough with her now that she was pregnant? Fantastic question. That's a big red sign. I'm glad you're enjoying the story. Mu Tianxiao's face was dark and unreadable. After his consort complained a bit, he came back to his senses and returned to his usual gentle, considerate self. Usual, gentle, considerate self, my ass. It's a big old red flag right there. He said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I got too excited. I forgot that you need to be treated with special care now." Mu Tianxiao was very good at concealing his emotions and lying. For a moment, Liang Suyun thought she had made a mistake. She wanted to have a good life with him, so she smiled and said, "I'm fine. There's no need to be so nervous. I was just thinking it would be nice to have a child like Prince Jing's heir." When Mu Tianxiao thought of the boy in the emperor's arms, the corners of his lips twitched and he smiled strangely. Yes, it would be nice. Mu Tianxiao had originally been very happy when he found out about Lady Liang's pregnancy. This child was like rain in the midst of a drought. He would soon have what Prince Jing had. Originally, he'd been trying to figure out how to subtly steal the emperor's attention from Prince Jing. When he heard that the emperor had rewarded Prince Jing's children with many things upon their arrival at the capital, Mu Tianxiao thought the emperor must be getting on in age, making him more inclined to dote on his grandsons. If he informed the emperor that Lady Liang was pregnant, the emperor would have to pay attention to more than just Prince Jing's children. He had been so hopeful, but the emperor was still so cold towards him and his future child. Even worse, the emperor treated Prince Jing's eldest son much too warmly. He was just a tiny child, yet the emperor sat him on his knee. Mu Tianxiao was resentful. He had always known that the emperor didn't like him because his mother, Consort Shang, used to be Empress Xiaohuai's servant. Ever since he could remember, the emperor never asked to see his mother, and she'd held the lowest rank of second-class attendant throughout his childhood. His mother hadn't reached consort status until he was an adult. Oh, he's such a red flag. He's like a blinking red flag. By then, the emperor would only occasionally visit Yongfu Palace on account of the prince. Before, he thought that even if the emperor didn't like him, he would at least like his children. During festivals and holidays, the emperor would summon even the Marquise of Ping and Marquise of An's children, and he sat Prince Jing's eldest son on his knee as soon as he arrived. Why was he so cold to just the sixth prince's child? It was clear that in the emperor's heart he was still inferior to Prince Jing, and even inferior to the second prince and third prince. Even though he brought his consort to him to announce the good news in person, Even though he had brought his consort with him to announce the good news in person, it was useless. The emperor still never mentioned giving him another job. Was he really just going to spend his consort's entire pregnancy keeping her company? Mu Tianxiao started to hate the emperor again. Having said that, though, although this trip hadn't turned out the way he expected, it wasn't fruitless. He'd been in a rush to bring his princess consort into the palace because he'd heard that Prince Jing's family was also entering the palace today. He wanted to use the opportunity to see Prince Jing's children himself. The confidant he'd sent to the western border never responded, so Mu Tianxiao had given up waiting and decided that his confidant was gone. He'd most likely found something out and been silenced by Prince Jing. But Mu Tianxiao didn't know the specific reason. He didn't have anyone to help him anymore, so he had to use any opportunity he got to see things for himself. And it was lucky he'd entered the palace. Though his child wasn't favored, he discovered one of Prince Jing's secrets. Prince Jing's sons didn't look like him. The emperor and Luoru Shang said that they looked a lot like Prince Jing, but unless Mu Tianxiao had gone blind, those were just polite comments. Since he was a couple years younger than Prince Jing, Mu Tianxiao didn't know what Prince Jing had looked like as a child. The more he thought, the more he drove himself into a corner, the more he convinced himself he was right. He must be right. Regardless of whether the male consort really did give birth to the children or not, the imperial physicians had said before that Prince Jing's children would most likely suffer from the same mute condition as Prince Jing did. But the reality Mu Tianxiao saw was that none of the children were mute, and none of them looked like Prince Jing. That was suspicious. The imperial physician that the emperor sent had definitely tested their legitimacy, but the western border was Prince Jing's territory. Wouldn't he get whatever results he wanted? No, that would be if you were on the western border. You're thinking of yourself. Yes, that must be what had happened. Prince Jing knew that his muteness was a disadvantage, but if he'd had healthy children, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Prince Jing was determined to fight for the throne, so it was very likely that he took the risk to disguise the children as his own. As for the male consort giving birth, Wu Tianxiao thought it was quite an attention-seeking strategy, or perhaps he had a bolder theory. There was one child within the four that did look a lot like the male consort. Could it be that these healthy babies were the children of the male consort and another woman, and Prince Jing had simply recorded them under his name? If that was the case, Prince Jing truly was fearless. Wu Tianxiao was certain that he'd gotten some dirt on Prince Jing. He'd used this to make a plan and hit him where it hurt. The emperor was too biased. But what would happen if he found out that the grandson he doted on wasn't Prince Jing's real offspring? He couldn't wait to see the emperor's reaction. Even Emperor Xiaohuai's son wouldn't be able to recover from muddying the imperial bloodline. But what if he was wrong? Would he suffer because of his own meddling? No, not as long as he made sure they were illegitimate. When Mu Tianxiao thought of this, the humiliation he'd suffered earlier meant nothing. His mood improved, and he smiled, saying, "I think the little heir is quite interesting. It'd be nice if we could meet him again." Liang Shuyun didn't know the truth. She thought the sixth prince just like children. As for Liu, after seeing the emperor and waiting until the emperor had held Da Bao for a sufficiently long amount of time, he took the children to Changchun Palace. He'd been to Changchun Palace when he was a fish, but it was his first time as a human and as Prince Jing's consort. He had his guard up carefully, afraid that he would arouse suspicion by showing his familiarity with the area. After all, they were at the palace. "Don't worry." Prince Jing warmly patted the back of his hand, telling him to not be nervous. Ever since they'd entered the palace, he'd been with him and had never left his side. Liu followed Prince Jing, comforted. The servants at Changchun Palace had been informed in advance that they were coming. The cloth and silk to pay homage to the late empress were laid out, and the main hall had been tidied up, candles flickering. Prince Jing lit 3 sticks of incense as usual, and the family of 6 bowed to Empress Xiaohuai's tablet over and over again. This scene reminded Liu of the secret from Prince Jing's infancy that took place in Changchun Palace that he had seen in the system. He had never understood this secret, and he hadn't had time to ponder it after he had his fish children. He was too busy raising them. Maybe he should take this opportunity to find time and wander around Changchun Palace. He might be able to locate the room and find some clues. He thought this was a pretty good idea. Wang Shi found 2 chairs for Prince Jing and Liu, and they both sat down. Sibao suddenly opened his little eyes and pointed somewhere, shouting, "Ah!" Liu looked at where the little chubby hand was pointing and saw a box placed on the shelf. There was something on the box that looked like a golden pouch. That was a little strange, he thought. Why hadn't he seen this when he came last time? But Changchun Palace had been cleaned since then, so perhaps it was originally somewhere else and the staff had just moved it there recently. Prince Jing's gaze ordered Wang Shi to go over and take a look. Soon after, he brought back an old cloth tiger. "Ah! Tiger!" This cloth tiger attracted all of the children's attention, and they all started wailing. They had a lot of toys, so of course they couldn't miss out on a cloth tiger. The children all wanted the cloth tiger. Wang Shi didn't dare to give it to them directly, so after he'd tested it with a silver needle, he cleaned off the dust on it and wiped it with a cloth a few times before handing it to Prince Jing. It could only be given to the children after Prince Jing approved. Prince Jing took the cloth tiger and glanced at it with a look of nostalgia. Liu had seen an older woman sewing a cloth tiger in the memory, and he'd seen another cloth tiger in Emperor Xiaohuai's room in the Chang'an Manor. Now there was another one? Where had it come from? Tianxi, do you have memories of this? Liu asked. Prince Jing nodded and showed Liu a stitch on the cloth tiger's tail that had been sewn back together after it broke. This, Liu laughed. Did you play with it when you were younger? Emperor Xiaohuai liked to make cloth tigers for her son, so Prince Jing must have had one. His guess was right. Prince Jing nodded again. Liu recalled the secret and asked, probing, Then do you remember a wet nurse you had when you were in your 30s, when you were a child? Prince Jing slowly shook his head. This wasn't the first time Liu had asked this. He didn't have much hope to begin with. The Prince Jing in the memory had still been an infant. He looked even younger than Da Bao and the others, so how could the adult Prince Jing remember? Wang Shi didn't know either. Liu had asked before and found out that Wang Shi had only begun accompanying Prince Jing after Emperor Xiaohuai passed away. Wang Gonggong did know a wet nurse who had served Prince Jing before, but that wet nurse was tall and strong, which didn't match the wet nurse in the memory. However, Liu assumed a prince would have several wet nurses and concluded that the one he saw in the memory was only one of them. Whoops. Unfortunately, neither Wang Shi nor the other wet nurse knew anything about her. You wouldn't have to ask head eunuch Luo, right? After much thought, Liu decided that this was the only other person he could ask, but would head eunuch Luo help him? Prince Jing looked over the cloth tiger, squeezing it, and after determining that nothing was wrong with it, put it in Si Bao's hand. Si Bao had held the cloth tiger that Daddy Prince Jing gave him and yelled in happiness. But soon, the other 3 children targeted him. Da Bao, Air Bao, and San Bao all yelled, "Ah! Everyone who saw it gets a share!" Si Bao wasn't having it. Daddy Prince Jing gave him this toy. It was only Si Bao's. Si Bao put the cloth tiger under his arm. He could roll and sit, but he couldn't walk yet, so he rolled on the spot with the cloth tiger in his arms, planning to escape. Da Bao, Air Bao, and San Bao quickly blocked Si Bao with their round little bodies. When Si Bao stopped rolling, Air Bao grabbed the cloth tiger's tail. Da Bao and San Bao each grabbed a tiger's leg, and Si Bao held the tiger's head. Nobody was willing to let go. After a short stalemate, a ripping sound was heard. The cloth tiger was quite old and had been ripped once before, so it was easy for it to get torn in the children's scuffle. Da Bao, Air Bao, and San Bao were dazed and quickly let go of the toy. Si Bao grabbed the broken tiger, his lips trembling, wanting to cry. Liu almost cried himself from laughter. He rushed forward to hold Si Bao, who buried his head in his fish father's arms and sobbed, heartbroken. Liu gently patted his back, whispered a few words of comfort, and looked at the cloth tiger in Si Bao's hand. It was in pretty bad condition. Liu furtively glanced at Prince Jing. He was also smiling, not upset at all. Liu asked for the toy, pretending to look at it, and softly said, "Don't cry, Si Bao. It'll be back to how it was once we sew it up." Si Bao blinked his tear-filled eyes, confused. Liu mimed sewing to show him what he meant and opened up the cloth tiger. But as he did, he noticed the words Pu Liu embroidered into the tiger's lining. His heart skipped a beat. Why were these words embroidered inside? This cloth tiger had been Prince Jing's toy when he was a child, so it couldn't be anything like a love token, but it looked a little like the label on modern clothes. Was the label a name? The person who'd made the cloth tiger? As Liu was thinking, Si Bao started getting anxious, waiting for him to speak again, and pulled on his sleeve. Liu returned to his senses and went back to comforting Sibao. 15 minutes later, Sibao was asleep in his fish father's arms with tears in his eyelashes. He'd finally quieted down. Liu had to strike while the iron was hot and teach the little troublemakers to show love and respect as good brothers should. Da Bao knew he'd misbehaved. He sat ramrod straight, clasping his hands together and asking for forgiveness like an adult. Airbao and Sanbao looked at each other, took off each other's pants, exposing their little butts, and asked their fish dad to spank the other one. Liu had to hold in a laugh. Oh my goodness, these kids. And on that note, we are done reading tonight. We had mostly just kind of some family goodness and the starting of the next part of the plot, which, by the way, we will actually be finishing up book 3 next week on Tuesday, which I think is pretty exciting. Oh. Okay, other than giving me a heart attack, part of my lights just fell, but since they're plastic, they made one heck of a clattering noise. So, yeah, I'm much more awake now. Sorry that I kind of yelled into the microphone. But yeah, on that note, I guess, I'll say goodnight. Right, unintentional jump scare. Whew. I know I was saying I'm getting ready for spooky season. I just didn't expect it would be that kind of spooky. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's reading. We will finish up book 3 on Tuesday, the usual time, 8 CST. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I don't think I've got a ton going on, but I hope if you all have something fun, you enjoy it. Even if you don't, I hope you have a restful weekend. To all those watching now and watching later, good night. I know I always have to do this like weird lean forward, so now I say good night. Good night.